And for me, it's in the fall of 1987. I left work and I went to the gym as I did most nights. And this particular night, it was like any other night in a routine time. And fortunately for me, I started out with the overhead lat machine. That required, number one, sitting in a chair, and number two, buckling a seatbelt. I pulled the strap and I buckled into that seatbelt, and I looked up, and I saw Roger coming from behind the desk, and he was tethered to about 6 or 7 helium-filled balloons and a white envelope. And I sat there and I thought, who's the sucker that he's going to embarrass with these balloons? I'm a guy that doesn't like surprises. I'm a guy that doesn't like to be the center of attention in a public situation. As I kept looking at him, he kept coming in my direction. And he kept walking, I kept waiting for him to divert and go elsewhere. And he didn't stop until he was right in front of me. And he said, some woman came in here today and brought this stuff and said when you came in to work out tonight, I was supposed to give them to you. And with that, he handed me the envelope. And I had no clue what was going on, and I opened that envelope. And in reading 6 words, my life and the life of my family changed forever with the news that Carol was pregnant. Stephanie was 5 years old, turning 6 in a day or so. Catherine was 8, going to be 8 in December. And David was turning 14 in January. I was stunned. I was shocked. It really wasn't disbelief. I believed it, but I was totally blindsided. Carol had given me no indication whatsoever in any way that she was possibly pregnant. I had no clue. There was never, I'm not feeling well, I've been sick, pass me the pickles for my ice cream. No indication until I read that envelope. So Roger helped me unbuckle the seatbelt, helped me out of the seat. I'm just kidding. That became, how do we tell the kids? And we discussed it and decided to have a special dinner. We told them we were having a dinner, and we had some big news for them. And David said, yeah, trip to Jamaica. And the girls, to that point, had talked, I wouldn't say incessantly, but very frequently about the desire to have a baby. And they wanted us so much to have a baby. And I had actually heard Stephanie and Catherine pray for a baby. So when we told them that their mother was having a baby, the joy, the screaming was beyond belief. And as I looked at David, he had a napkin to his eye as he was crying. It was an unbelievable gift. We thank God for his grace upon grace in bringing John to our family. Everybody was thrilled. And for me, it was my lifetime surprise, thanks to Carol. And the girls, as I say, and our whole family, it was transformative. He literally changed everyone in our family's life experience. And we could not be more grateful when John came into all of our lives. Stephanie actually pretty much believes that she raised John, and I will not argue with that. For the first 3 to 4 years of John's life, he slept every night with Stephanie. She would grab books, she'd tuck them in, and she would read to him, and then they fell asleep. She was there for John, his first Little League practice. He had talked to her about how scared he was, and he was so nervous. So she wanted to come with him to his Little League practice, and she drove with me, and we sat in the bleachers and watched his first practice. When she felt comfortable that everything was okay, she went in the car and did her homework. When it came time for John to go to UVA in his first year, she knew what a basket case Carol and I were going to be. So she insisted and wanted to come along and drove with us for the 2-day process of getting John in school. And when we left Page Hall for the last time, as we walked to the car, I was walking behind them, and Carol and Stephanie were clutching each other and just bawling their eyes out. And I was behind them in not too much in better shape. Catherine supported John in everything he did, was always there for him. When she walked down the aisle of Agnes Irwin in her graduation from high school, she carried a sign wishing John a happy birthday. When she was at Penn, she invited and had John in there on numerous occasions to stay overnight in her dorm or stay in the sorority. She would take him shopping. On one occasion, she bought him a pair of corduroys that I really didn't know about at the time. When John came to me, he was about 7th grade, and he asked me, "Do you think my legs are going to get any longer?" And I said, "Well, considering you're in 7th grade, I think your legs are going to get a lot longer. You'll probably put on 50 or 60 pounds. And he was so disappointed because he told me he didn't want to grow out of those pants. After John's second year at UVA, he had to have his tonsils out. He was getting infections. He had mono his first year. And the decision was to have his tonsils out in Bryn Mawr, and Catherine was up in New York City. She came down to manage the situation. She went with me to the surgeon. She had a list of questions for the surgeon. She took notes. Post-surgery, she was in charge of his medication. She put a list of everything that had to be done. She went out and bought him high-caloric drinks so he wouldn't lose weight when he couldn't eat. She wanted him at a certain weight when he got back to school for fall lacrosse. She eventually had to get back to New York City. She had everything printed up for us, everything we had to do. She said, "I have a 3-strike rule. If you guys mess up 3 times, I'm going to be back here." That first night, apparently we were a little late getting him his medication. I got to work the next day, opened up my email, got an email from Catherine. The only thing she said was, "strike 1." We got the message. David? David was John's hero. John spent his stroller years being pushed around the track at Haverford School that served as the perimeter of the football field and lacrosse field. When John was only 4 years old, David went to Duke. The next 5 years of John's life was spent traveling to Duke and other places to watch David play lacrosse. There was no bigger child Duke University fan than John Haldy. For over half of his life at that point, he was going to Duke games. He loved Duke. Why? Because of his role model, David. We were actually in Klockner Stadium for the ACCs when John was about 7 or 8 years old. Took John for a little walk. We came across this spot that was selling Duke gear. There was a blue and white Duke jacket, size large, far too big for John at the time. He was probably in 7th grade. I asked him, do you want that jacket? He said, I would love that jacket, but do you think it's too expensive? I literally had to talk him into letting me buy him the jacket because he was worried it cost too much. The next 5 or 6 years, he never took off that jacket. He thanked me about 45 times on the drive home for buying him that jacket. Nobody loved Duke like John. For me, John was my mitigator. He helped me deal with the changing of our family. He helped me deal with David away at college. He helped me deal with his 2 sisters getting into adolescence. I have a problem with letting go. John, in his childness and who he was kind of my salvation. I'd go visit David at Duke. My business trips peaked up when David was down there. I went down a lot more often to Research Triangle Park and do business because I had a chance to see David. Every time I left him, I cried the way home. Once I got home, I'd take the kids out to the movie theater. We could be in there, we'd polish off a bucket of unbuttered popcorn, and I could watch John put that bucket on his head and eventually walk out of the movie theater wearing it. And things were good. I could watch John take 2 32-ounce plastic bottles of club soda to an old backpack, and boom, he was a Rocketeer. Things were great. I'd walk through his room and step over his arsenal of weaponry, swords, guns, sticks, and I felt great. His Jim Carrey imitations were unbelievable. I tried to answer the difficult questions of, Dad, why does cotton candy melt when I spit on it? I could handle that one. He gave me advice that I listened to. Don't fly on a plane without gasoline. I never did. At a young age, it was obvious that John was coordinated. He was athletic. He was involved in all the youth sports. I know I've watched well over 500 basketball games that he played in, well over 500 lacrosse games, but for me, it was the travel, it was the car rides. It was the driving to North Philadelphia, to Findlay, to watch summer league games. It was a trip down to New Orleans for an AAU tournament. We stayed in a hotel together. It was the cheap hotels in Reading, Wildwood, driving a car and talking. One night we had a tremendous win against a team in Reading, went to a restaurant, sitting there as a team. I'm sitting there, and John's 13 or 14, and 4 teenage girls come in and sit at a table nearby. One of John's teammates said, let's get a waitress to take 4 Sprites over to that table and tell them that it's from us. John said, no. Have the waitress take over 4 waters. We'd have to pay for the Sprites. That's my boy. It was a short car ride from our house over to Haverford School. John's sophomore year, they were going a bus ride to Hershey, playing for the state championship in lacrosse. They had played Hempfield during the regular season, hadn't played particularly well, won a 1 or 2 goal game against Hempfield. So I'm driving John over, giving him kind of a pep talk. Don't take him for granted. You're prepared for this. Don't be nervous. Get to the school, he's opening the door, and he looks at me and says, Dad, this is a business trip, and we're gonna take care of business. I still feel the chills. When I watch John play, you can see certain character traits in somebody as they play their games in sports. It was always obvious in the way John played, that he was unselfish. I had so many coaches tell me, I want him to be selfish. He's too unselfish. He shouldn't pass so much. I said, that's who John is. He feels better making the pass for somebody else to take the shot than necessarily him taking the shot. John has some, uncommon traits. He's kind and decent. I just noticed observed his value system just from the time he was a little kid. And trust me, I take no credit for it. I'm there for the ride. I'm watching it. He's loyal. When he got his first job in New York City, he was there 2 years. Pretty crazy guy. He was in finance, commodities trading. John felt that it was time to move on, but he couldn't. He had offers in finance. He just couldn't take another job in finance because it was too close to betrayal for him. He knew how his boss would feel if he was to leave him for another job in finance, so he changed careers and changed industries and went into reinsurance because he couldn't betray his boss that way. And John's traits and the kindness and the caring, I am so comforted because I saw and see those exact same traits in Kate. In Easter of 2015, the first time that, in my recollection anyway, that I really got to spend time with Kate, she came down to our house for Easter. She came with Easter baskets. She came with flowers. She came with presents for my grandchildren, my daughter's children. I went, wow, is that a facade? Is that who she is? When I watch my grandchildren's eyes light up when she enters a room, when I see how kind she is to them and how thoughtful and caring she is, we are so comforted when I see how she is with John. I see how he is with her and the love that they have for each other. What could be better than that? So, I propose a toast to Kate and John, to John and Kate, to the love that you have for each other, to a lifetime together of sharing and caring and being there for each other and sharing what this world has to offer within a marriage that was made in heaven, Charlottesville, and New York City. Thank you.